with dancing, and it was an experimental time. We played rock, we played everything.
Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for being here. So today we have a wonderful artist, musician, composer. So he's originally from Mexico, but he went to live to United States. Yes, when he was a child, he just told me. His name is MISCHA. I'm not sure if I am pronouncing well.
Misha.
Yes, MISCHA.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for being here. And could you please tell something more about yourself to our public, to introduce more about your life in the aspect of the artistic way, please?
I come from a Russian family that emigrated to Mexico, and where I was born, and they escaped the war and went there. And I came to the United States when I was 7 or 8 years old. All the musical influences I have show up in my music, going from the Russian Jewish background to growing up with música mexicana, Latin, Mexican music, and so on, coming to the United States and then absorbing all these different types of things that all feed into what comes back out of you. We're like a little processing. I make my living as a jeweler. As a young man, I returned to Mexico, and I very quickly fell into a lot of success. I played in a band that was the biggest band at the time with a man named Javier Batis, who was a very famous rock and roll guy, and he taught Santana how to play. Wow. I played flute and harmonica and sang with him Champagne a Gogo. And we performed on a television show with a very famous artist in Mexico, Alejandro Jodorowsky, that performed in Mexico as El Inconsciente Colectivo, the collective unconscious. And we were very notorious and had a lot of exciting times at that time, and performed in many different ways, all the way from experimental music, using indigenous Central American instruments. I played flute with dancing, and it was an experimental time. We played rock, we played everything. I was there also in 1968 during the Olympics. And at that time, I met some of my heroes. John Cage was one of them. Merce Cunningham, all these different people that I met. While it was a wonderful thing to meet them, it burst my bubbles. The ideas that young people have about what's important, be it success, to be known, etc. The thing that people strive for now on the internet, for me, was burst when I was by the time I was 19. And it seemed like a very empty pursuit. And while I was having a lot of success with the music, I got offered the lead role to Hair in Acapulco when it opened there, and carte blanche, and I turned it down because I was going through a transition. And that transition was that I felt that music was to serve a purpose in my life that was not for the pocketbook, it was not for the newspapers, it was not for the groin, the lower area that rock and roll often is good for, and that there was something else I wanted to do with music. And so I walked away from that whole world at that time, and vowed that music would always serve my heart and my spiritual life exclusively. It's the smartest decision I ever made. So I make my living as a jeweler. I design and create pieces. My wife and I have a business in San Francisco. I've done this for 50, 60 years. Ever since I was a little boy, I had three loves.
Okay.
Music, art, and stones.
Okay.
As a little boy, for a while, I lived in Tijuana, and I would try and grab tourists to come into stores to go buy opals because I just loved stones. Started collecting and cutting stones and everything as a little boy. And throughout my life, what was my hobby and which was my business rotated, turned around and around. So when I was a young man, I worked as a musician. When I left that and I came back to this country, eventually I ended up working as an illustrator, painting and illustrating children's books and products.
Oh, God. So nice.
And while I was working for that company, we were about to have our children. And a fellow who worked there said to me, because I was not making very much money and I needed to take care of a family. And he said, "You've got your head and your tail on backwards. Your hobby should be your business." My hobby, making jewelry, and your business should be your hobby. So he had an idea. He actually, that's when I became a jeweler. So that has continued as the means by which I make my livelihood, but it also has a spiritual connection because the mineral kingdom is a very powerful kingdom to work with, as is sound, as is beauty. They're all related. So you would laugh out loud if you saw the gems and crystals and precious, non-precious, everything that I have is got a story and meaning. Anyway, so that's a little background for you right there. So no, I will continue. When I returned, right during that period in Mexico, when all my bubbles were bursting, and I realized what was left. The only thing that was left was the one thing that had meaning for me since I was a little boy, and that was the desire to become a real human being. And what's a real human being? The divine truth that we all carry.
Yes. Okay.
That's what I felt. As a matter of fact, I will go backwards. When I was a little boy living in Tijuana, I didn't know it at the time, but we lived in poverty because we lived in a tenement right above the main street, not a tenement, but an apartment building, but it was very poor. I thought we were rich because we had a maid. But of course, in Mexico or in Tijuana, you could be in that apartment and that's poor by US standards, but your maid lives in a cardboard shack outside the hills.
Oh my God.
So, anyway, our maid took me to see Pinocchio. You remember the animated movie? And on the way home, I'm holding her hand and I'm just lost. I'm lost. And she said, "Misha, what's the matter with you?" And I told her, I want to be a real boy. She said, "What do you mean? You are a real boy." I said, No, this is pretend. I want to be a real boy. I was so moved by Pinocchio's transformation through love to become a real boy in that story. And she said, "What do you mean?" And I said, I couldn't explain it, but I knew that there was a real boy within me that was different than what I was experiencing. So here as an old man in his late 70s, I still want to be a real boy. So anyway, that haunted me, that whole thing. And it always was there behind any artistic pursuit I had, whether it was painting or music. And that was to connect with that which is within you, within everyone. And my path led me to learn about Mayor Baba. I came up on a visit from Mexico in 1968 while Mayor Baba was still alive. And at this time, I had, on my own, I'd come to have certain types of understandings about what life was and what my path was. And one of the things I believed at that time was that this was the period of manifestation of the Christ. And I thought that that would be done by all the people all over the world who joined in that discovery for themselves and attained to that state of consciousness. And while I was in Berkeley on this visit from Mexico, I stayed with a friend that I'd been in a film with in Mexico. And he had to go pick up something at a meeting house. So I went with him, I walked in, and I saw this photograph of Meher Baba, and it just blew me open. I looked at him and I went, oh my goodness, it's him. It's not all of us becoming Christ. He's actually come. That was just I don't know why. I didn't know anything about him. All I saw was his picture. I didn't want to speak with anyone who was there. I had no interest in the people except one. I heard somebody playing a guitar beautifully. And I turned away from this picture of Meher Baba, where I had just said, he's here, the Christ, he's the Christ. Just by seeing him, it triggered that profound of an explosion in my heart. And I turned around towards the musician. I went over, and while he was playing guitar, I always carried my flute with me. I pulled my flute open and I started playing with him. And people gathered. It was just instantly a wonderful mix. He was playing an unusual type of raga open tuning thing, folk raga, a very interesting thing. And when we finished the piece and a large group gathered around us, he looked at me and he said, "Who are you?" in a very eccentric style of speaking. I told him my name, and he said, "We have to record together." And I said, "Well, I'm returning to Mexico the day after tomorrow. You can come down there and record with me there." And he said, "Mexico? What do I want to go to Mexico for? Puna, P-O-O-N-A. That's how it was spelled then. That's where I want to go." And I thought, God, this guy's a weirdo. Puna, I don't know what Puna is, or, Turned out this man was a very influential guitar player named Robbie Basho.
Okay.
Robbie Basho is a significant figure in guitar he passed away young, unfortunately, but he has become, as a matter of fact, there was just an article about him in the New York Times 2 weeks ago, talking about the fact that this is one of the most unrecognized in his time guitar players who's gaining more and more influence and recognition, because he was one of those first guitar players that opened up the field of the new guitar style that mixes world music with what he did was very new. It really affected things. In any case, that's when I met Meher Baba. I went back to Mexico, and I couldn't get him out of my mind. I knew nothing about him except that I had those words come into my heart. I didn't learn a thing about him there. I wrote my first song as a way to process the way his eyes affected me.
Okay.
That's the first song I ever wrote. I had not composed any songs before that with lyrics. And I still didn't really know who he was except for that feeling. And after many, concluding the experiment of living in Mexico at that time, it was time to return to the United States. And as I was packing up, there was and I was packing fragile things with newspaper. I was using a Rolling Stone magazine, and I saw Meher Baba's image in the news that he had dropped his body. And as I looked at that, his image, I know this sounds strange, but his image came up out of the picture and flowed, like the light pattern of it flowed through my chest, and I started convulsing with tears. And I thought, I missed my chance. I missed my chance. By this time, I was involved with something called Sufism, that I'm sure you know,
Mhm.
or what little, and I understood certain words like kutu. I didn't know what the word avatar really meant, even though we had a cat called Avatar in our house. My understanding of it was what you normally look in Western dictionaries. And as I started crying and thinking I'd missed my opportunity, I had an internal, I can't say I heard a voice, but an internal message that said, no, you're on your way to me. And it felt like a caress, just saying, keep coming, keep moving. So I ended up in the United States. I'll make this short. My wife and I ended up coming to Berkeley. And the very first morning, I learned of a Sufi Murshid teacher who was one of Meher Baba's close ones.
Mhm.
And the hair on my neck everywhere just stood up. This was my teacher. And I got in touch right away. And of course, she was my teacher. That was my first teacher. And so there began my life as a musician, a fellow connected to his destiny more strongly. And I don't know where to go from there with you. It would be a long story, but
No, don't
that's
worry.
where I began singing in that context that I always knew I wanted to sing in. In Mexico, back when I tried talking to my friends about, I have a feeling that the music is not about what we've been doing, which is really all in the mind or in the groin. Either it's in an abstract experiment where we're performing because this is such a novel experiment and idea, or else if I was singing in the nightclubs for the regular reason, get the chicks and do the thing that rock and roll does, which is nothing wrong with it. Music is so amazing. It serves a million purposes and needed for different people.
Yes. Let's speak a little bit more about, okay, your music connected with Meher Baba, yes, like the perfect master that is considered. Why is considered for you a perfect master, and why to compose for him?
Okay. First, I don't want to be argumentative,
Yes.
but I will say that I don't consider him a perfect master.
All right.
A perfect master, as I understand it, is one who has gone from man to becoming God conscious.
Mhm.
Examples of this are Sri Ramakrishna, Sri Aurobindo, Milarepa, Saint Francis. I can go on and on. There are examples of attaining this state of consciousness, which is one with God. The avatar descends from God to become man, as man from time to time, as needed. And that's what I understand Meher Baba to be. So although that would be the same consciousness, it's a different function. And the function of the avatar, that's my understanding of him. But I have normally, it's funny that I'm discussing this publicly because I never talk about this with people. It's irrelevant to me what they believe or, who they follow or what. It's not my mind to tell them anything or to change them. I think everyone is right where they're supposed to be. That's fine. So my recognition of Meher Baba is not as a perfect master, but as an avatar, which is the avatar of the age, the Kalki avatar. My music, since he is my beloved, my ideal, my inner true self, as I understand it, everything I do is offered at his feet. And so that's why whether I'm working at work, trying to do my best as in my capacity as a jeweler, whether I did it when I was working as an illustrator, or whether I do it in music, it's the same practice throughout the day. And that is to offer myself, just to offer myself to love.
That is beautiful. Thank you. So for our friends that doesn't know the concept of avatar, can you tell me a little bit, just in a few words, what is? I mean, you tried to say, but I didn't really catch it. What it is?
The avatar is a manifestation that comes from time to time, every 700 to 1400 years. And that is God descending into creation for the purpose of retuning us as we work our way back home. It's a retunement. Every time he comes, he raises the pitch. He is the highest expression of humanity at that time, and he does a work that moves all of humanity together. A perfect master works with those who are in his circle or her circle. Like they work with their circles of connections. Certain perfect master. I'm not the one to really be explaining this. This gets into cosmology, but I will say this. Meher Baba, the examples there are Zarathustra or Zoroaster, Rama, Krishna, Buddha, Jesus, Mohammed, Meher Baba.
Right.
For me, they are all one and the same. He is the latest expression of it. And this is also significant time in that this advent of the avatar is written about in the scriptures of the Vedantic scriptures. I don't know, but it's called the time of the Kalki avatar. And he is the Kalki avatar, which is often represented by him being connected to a white horse or riding on a white horse. And it's a very significant manifestation in that it occurs at, I find myself right now talking too much. And usually I prefer to whatever I have to say, I put into a song, whether I'm saying it for somebody else. Well, usually when I write a song, it's for me to understand what I have to say. And when I just talk, I end up hearing a voice going, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not a teacher, so I shouldn't be one explaining any of these things.
All right.
You know what I mean? I am a good example of how, actually, this is a good time to say this. I'm not an exceptional guitar player. I'm not an exceptional flute player, harmonica player, or singer. I'm not great at any of those things. I'm better than average, but what I have is the best subject in the universe. And the best subject in the universe plays me. So a master guitar player can take a fairly average or bad guitar, tune it up, and that master player plays beautiful music on it. And that's how I feel. A very average instrument that the master musician has chosen to play. And through me, a lot is getting done. Not by me, but through me. That's a big difference.
Yes.